Will Tennessee ever feel the burn from NC State? Now, back in the 80s, we just said they're never going to feel the burn in recruiting from Clemson, but Caleb makes an interesting argument. Caleb, so tell me why the Vols should be worried about NC State in recruiting one day.
Well, this is more about why the Vols need to bury NC State on Saturday to make sure this doesn't happen.
Okay.
Let me just, guys, give you a quick history lesson real quick. And this wasn't too long ago. 2021, Tennessee blows out South Carolina. 2022, they're undefeated. They're balling. They get a couple of commitments from South Carolina. They go face the Gamecocks on the road. What happens, Dave? Jeremy Banks saga happens. Tennessee lost 3 commitments to South Carolina because of that game alone. One who flipped, 2 other 4-stars they would have gotten who committed to South Carolina. These Carolina schools are threats if Tennessee lets them become threats. NC State is a solid program led by Dave Dorn right now that is in a very unique position where they could, if the chips fall in a certain way, take over the ACC. And if they do that, that'll make them high profile enough to be able to recruit the area. Let me explain why they can take over the ACC. Clemson's on the downward trend. They are declining, and I think the narrative surrounding Dabo is only hurting his calls, which is going to make it harder for him to recruit long-term. North Carolina's got a 175-year-old coach who will never do more than what he's doing right now. All due respect to Mac Brown. Florida State is a one-year wonder fluke. I don't think they're that good of a program under Mike Norvell. Florida State and Clemson are, by the way, spending more time trying to get out of the ACC than they are trying to recruit and win games. And that narrative is only hurting them on the trail. In Miami, they're going to be good this year because of Cam Ward, but Mario Cristobal can't last long-term. So there's a very good chance NC State becomes the class of the ACC. And we saw this happen no less than 15 years ago. Clemson took advantage of a very down ACC under Dabo Swinney. Started winning conference titles, competing for conference titles. Meanwhile, it was just enough for them to start plucking recruits away from Tennessee that was in a decade of dysfunction. That only increased a decade of dysfunction. And the narrative of Clemson dominating the ACC was enough for them to start recruiting at a high enough level where they could then compete with the Alabamas and the Georgias and win 2 national titles in 3 years. Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean NC State can't do the same thing.
Elias says, for what it's worth, I think NC State is a sleeping giant, but they also won't be a threat because they'll never be in a situation of buying it at the SEC level. So I'm going to strengthen your argument, and then I'm going to tell you how I really feel, okay? I think Caleb's on to something in that NC State could be the default school. If Dabo Swinney gets sick of the new college football, Shane Beamer's going to get fired, transition there. Eventually, Mac Brown's going to retire at North Carolina. So that area, NC State could be the default school for kids that want to stay close to home. So I'll give you that. If you're now in Charlotte, it's almost as close to come to Knoxville as it is otherwise. But the further east you get, obviously, the closer you are to NC State. East you get, the closer you are to NC State's campus. So, Caleb, I'll give you that. I do think that Tennessee could lose a guy or two because they want to be at-home kids and they don't believe in Clemson, North Carolina, or South Carolina anymore. So I'll give you that. But I can't say that they'll ever really be a formidable foe against Tennessee in recruiting. I just don't ever see that. We did their averages. They average out to about a top 40 class over the past 4 years, and they were outside the top 50. Tennessee, with all the junk that they had going on, averages about a top 15 class. So, Caleb, they have a long, long way to go. How far to go, in your opinion? And they'll take you as far as you need to go in work trucks. All about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle available. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. We'll pull that website up. Contracting, all about time. Work Trucks has it figured out. Utility body trucks with an app hide. work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special. It's all online, worktrucksllc.com, Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com, worktrucksllc.com. They'll have you fit to a T. They'll save you time. Time is money as a contractor. Proud supporter of the Tennessee Vols. WorkTrucksLLC.com. All right, Kale, I just don't see NC State ever being at the level that Clemson got to, even though you've given me the history lesson and why it can happen. Clemson, as pointed out on the message board, didn't win a championship in the 80s. They were relevant before Dabo Swinney got there. To me, the other factor is, and if there are any of those in North Carolina, I would love your input to me. Does North Carolina State, like Auburn, like Texas A&M, like Florida State, are they always going to be in second place to North Carolina just because they're not the official state school? Is that a reach, Caleb?
You know, I thought that for a while, but I will say that, I've told you I'm very connected to traditional ACC basketball and things like that. And I mean the old ACC with Maryland in it and things like that. NC State was always the one school like north of South Carolina. Because basically the way the ACC always works is the southern schools from like South Carolina down, so Clemson, Georgia Tech, they care more about football. But from North Carolina up, they care more about basketball, with the exception of Virginia Tech. And I always said that NC State was the one school that seemed to have a fan base that could get excited about football on a maybe Virginia Tech level, a Clemson level, things like that, if they had something to cheer for. And by the way, Clemson did win the title in 1981. That was, I think that was a fluke title. I don't think anybody thought Herschel Walker had like 3 fumbles in a game against Georgia that year, and that was the only quality win they had. They did beat Nebraska in the bowl game, but that didn't count. I'm going to ignore that. So put it this way, Dave. Let's rewind. You're going to the Peach Bowl. It's 2003. Casey Clausen's final game. Tennessee's playing Clemson. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the game hasn't kicked off. Before the game kicks off, let's just talk about the situation. If I were to tell you right then that, hey, Dave, so T. Martin's son is going to be a 5-star receiver. This kid in the stands right there, Trevor Lawrence, that's wearing a Tennessee jersey, whose dad went there, who's a huge Tennessee fan. He's going to be a 5-star quarterback in about 10 years. There's this other kid from Oak Ridge named T. Higgins. He's going to be a 5-star quarterback, a 5-star receiver in 10 years. And this team you see right now, Clemson, they're going to get all 3 of those kids and beat Tennessee out for them. What would you have said to me?
I would have said you're crazy, because I thought they had, it was the EJ, what was his name? EJ or something. He was a very good linebacker.
Oh, you're thinking of Maryland. That's Maryland. EJ.
Oh, Maryland. I'm sorry. Okay. So I would have said you're crazy. Yeah. I didn't think that Clemson was anywhere on that level. And if you look back at it, how many of Clemson's players? So I get your point. Is it more important for Clemson, or I'm sorry, NC State, to hire the perfect coach? Because Dabo Swinney proved to be that. Or is it more important for NC State to have other teams struggle around them, such as Tennessee and South Carolina? I mean, to me, I don't think they have the coach in place right this moment to come close to competing with Tennessee in a recruiting perspective.
Well, this is kind of my hot take. I think it's the former, and I'm going to tell you why. You may think they aren't close with Dave Dorn. Dave, if you watch Dabo Swinney, though, would you ever look at that guy and be like, that guy won 2 national titles? He comes across as a goofball half the time. He's borderline Shane Beamer.
That's true.
And I think he just cashed in on the ACC being down, Tennessee being down, and to his credit, I'll give him this. He had a good long-time defensive coordinator in Brent Venables, and Dabo Swinney brought the spread offense to the ACC before anybody else was running it. And Taj Boyd fell out of the sky into his lap because Lane Kiffin pushed him out. I'm going to tell you this right now. We could go back in history. If Lane Kiffin does not pull Taj Boyd's scholarship, there is no Clemson dynasty. It never happens.
Wow. It's pretty strong. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're with Caleb on that, or if you're not, you can do it too. because I think some of the people might just say,
that's crazy.
But we'll see.
What do you think? Was Dabo a beneficiary of? Okay, you asked.
Let me ask you this. I don't think the ACC is going to be the ACC much longer. There's going to be a mega conference. Do you think NC State makes the mega conference? Because they're not going to compete with anybody in recruiting that's in the mega conference. We could agree with that, right?
We could. There's going to be 3 mega conferences, and it's the SEC, Big 10, and Big 12. I do think there's a spot for NC State in the Big 12. I do. Now, here's the thing. The SEC, guys, they want to get into North Carolina. And I've told you guys 1,000 times over, there is going to be a bidding war for North Carolina between the SEC and the Big 10. North Carolina and Virginia, the SEC and the Big 10 are both going to fight like hell to get those 2 schools. Here's the difference. If UNC and Virginia end up in the Big 10, the SEC can then go to NC State. Now, I don't know what you would do, Dave, but you would probably take Duke over NC State. But I would actually take NC State over Duke if I'm the SEC. If it's down to those 2 schools and I want to get into North Carolina, I'm taking NC State.
Well, in my mega conference, mine's different. You said 3. I got 32 teams in basketball. I don't give a rat's rear end about. So Duke's not even in the conversation.
Right. So it's if you but say you know this, you've talked to Greg Singy.
Okay,
they want to get in the North Carolina market.
Let's say they take 4 out of the ACC. They make a mega conference. They take about 10 out of the SEC. They take about 10 out of the Big 10. They take about 6 out of the Big 12. And hey, ACC, you've got room for 4. Does NC State make it before we move on?
No, because Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and are the top 3. And I think North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Virginia all have an over NC State, if that's the case. But I don't think there's going to be a mega conference of 32 teams. I think there's going to be a mega conference. There's going to be 3 mega conferences of roughly 70 teams, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, sir, I will credit you. You've won some people over on the message board. Where do we stand on the poll question?
All right, so finally I got some people over. It was 100% at 18 votes. No, they'll never be relevant. Now we're at 44 votes, and 11% are saying, yes, they're a sleeping giant. Okay. So once the people over with my comments. See, this is why I love our message board. Our message board is very intelligent, and they aren't stuck in their ways. They will listen to evidence, just like Dave and I do. Dave and I change our opinions based on evidence because that's what you're supposed to do.
Agreed.